Good evening. Welcome to the Woodchuck Report. This December 13th, 2019. Sorry for the late start. You would think as a millennial I would understand how technology works, but apparently not. With that being the case, got a couple of things to go through. Some things that happened within the last month or so, and then a major topic I'll go through is kind of the impeachment and what the current, what's happening right now. So, since I'm on even more limited time, I'll get right to it. So, things that happened, say, last Thursday, Justice Department's Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz debunked President Trump's accusation that the FBI had conspired to overthrow his presidency, one of his major points he's been talking about, but also said in his report that there was no exoneration of the Bureau, adding that serious errors he found in court filings were due to gross incompetence and negligence. Mr. Howitt's study amounted to the most searching look ever at the government's secretive system for carrying out national security surveillance on American soil, and what the report showed was not pretty. Continuing on, as I move the table. An order signed by Mr. President Trump essentially declares Judaism to be a race or national origin, and not just a religion for purposes of civil rights enforcement. The new definition is already playing out with the Education Department, whose civil rights chief is hunting for anti-Semitism on campuses. The House Judiciary Committee opened a 2-day markup session to debate 2 articles of impeachment against Mr. Trump before they are sent to the full House for a vote. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced plans for new sanctions on Iran's largest shipping company and a major airline for what he said were their roles in transporting material for the country's ballistic missile and nuclear programs. And back in June, Mr. Trump promised that millions of undocumented immigrants, also known as illegal aliens, already in the United States would be deported. That hasn't happened. Deportations and arrests actually dropped by 10% in the year that ended in September. Presidential candidate Joe Biden released an immigration plan on Wednesday that acknowledged pain caused by deportations during his time as vice president. He said he would roll back Mr. Trump's policy, but unlike some other Democrats, he does not endorse the decriminalization of unauthorized border crossing. I'm going to skip that one. Research indicates that Generation Z, which is I don't want to do math right now, is the first in which women are more likely than their male peers to be engaged in politics. Some are already planning to run for office one day, even though they can't vote yet. And on Wednesday, a bipartisan group of lawmakers agreed to give troops a pay raise and the president his Space Force, which was one of the things he declared would be the newest military branch. This is latest as of Friday. The Democratic-led House Judiciary Committee postponed the expected party line approval of 2 articles of impeachment accusing President Trump of abusing his powers and obstructing Congress. The committee plans to reconvene today to vote, which today being Friday. As the House moves toward what even he says an inevitable vote to impeach him, President Trump toggles between self-pity and combativeness, which seems very normal for him. Officials with the Trump campaign and Republican National Committee gathered Thursday for a state of the race briefing, which they described a beer and blue jeans party transformed by the president. They reveled in the idea of being on offense everywhere. I'm not sure what that means. The U.S. has settled on the final terms of the partial trade deal with China, moving closer to signing a pact that Mr. Trump originally announced in October. Presidential candidate Senator Elizabeth Warren, who also ramped up criticism of her Democratic primary opponents after months of avoiding conflict, rebuked rivals again Thursday in a speech about the economy and corruption. Progressive activists have led protests against Mayor Pete Buttigieg at his fundraising events this week, showing the left's growing frustration with his embrace of moderate politics. An influential union in Nevada, the third state to vote in the Democratic primary, told presidential candidates that health care, specifically keeping union health care, is what's on their members' minds. Debates may be ending for the year next week, but the Democratic DNC plans 4 more of them in January and February. And the Defense Department's Inspector General will examine a $400 million border wall contract that was awarded to a North Dakota company after Mr. Trump privately pushed for the deal. And the executive order on anti-Semitism that Mr. Trump signed this week is dividing the audience it was intended for, American Jews, because, as I said earlier, let me read it. The order signed declares Judaism to be a race or national origin, not just a religion, which is kind of a big thing among the Jewish community, whether it is a race or just a religion. Now, the reasons of my technology problems. All right. What I'm going to be talking about is how the articles of impeachment against President Trump compared to both Clinton and Nixon's. If you remember, President Clinton was also impeached. Nixon was not impeached. He was going to be, and he was told by then head of the Republicans at that time, and I'm paraphrasing here, that if he got impeached and it went to the Senate, there was enough votes for him to be removed. So to save face, he resigned. And besides former President Clinton, the only other president to be impeached was President Andrew Johnson, who was impeached and it did go to Senate, but he was not removed by a single vote. As in, had he had one more vote against him, he would have been removed. So, because of time and history, I'm going to just go through some of the things here. All right. So, the arguments. Democrats believe they have made a compelling and simple case with their two articles of impeachment that, one, the president abused his power by soliciting foreign interference by pressuring an ally, Ukraine, to announce an investigation into a political rival, former Vice President Joe Biden, while withholding military aid and dangling a head of state meeting, thereby corrupting the integrity of U.S. elections. Free and fair elections are the linchpin that holds together democracy, as Democrats have argued. And point two, that he has obstructed Congress, a co-equal branch of government, by withholding documents and preventing witnesses from testifying, thereby impeding Congress' investigatory powers. Wow. So, obviously Republicans disagree. Shocking. They say Democrats are acting on a personal vendetta and have been looking to impeach Trump since he was first elected. Not entirely wrong. It is true that some Democratic members had called for his impeachment long before this moment, but there was hardly a majority of the caucus before the Ukraine pressure campaign was brought into light. Arguable. On the substance, Republicans argue that the president did not abuse his power because Ukraine was known to be a corrupt country and that there's no direct evidence of a quid pro quo or solicitation of a bribe from foreign leader. Unfortunately, his tape he submitted proved that. Well, fortunately for him. Democrats and multiple witnesses have plenty of counterpoints that have been litigated for weeks since the beginning of the public impeachment inquiry process. Republicans and those who do not support this impeachment also say the president should not be charged with obstruction of Congress because Democrats in the House have not let the process fully play out by going through the courts and letting the third co-equal branch decide. So, now, different points. Sorry, as I have to flip through this and make sure it doesn't screw me over. So, in the articles of impeachment, it is true that no explicit crime is laid out as an article of impeachment. Bribery was considered to be paired with abuse of power, but in the end, as noted above, which I did not read, Democrats did not include it. There are two things to keep in mind, specifically constitutional-wise. There doesn't have to be an explicit crime to impeach a president. As Democrats say in the House Judiciary Committee Majority Report, some crimes like jaywalking are not impeachable, and some forms of misconduct may offend both the Constitution and the criminal law. Impeachment and criminality must therefore be assessed separately. Even though the president's commission of indictability crimes may further support a case for impeachment and removal. The report also says this about the Constitution's framers. Because they could not anticipate and prohibit every threat a president might someday pose, the framers adopted a standard sufficiently general and flexible to meet unknown future circumstances. Treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. That is actually in the Constitution. This standard was proposed by Mason and was meant, in his words, to capture all manner of great and dangerous offenses against the Constitution. Now, one could argue that while no crime is explicitly laid out, bribery or solicitation of a bribe is implied. The articles note twice that the president conditioned or was conditioning official acts for an announcement of investigations that would benefit him politically, which is usually a massive no-no all around. President Trump also sought to pressure the government of Ukraine to take these steps by conditioning official U.S. government acts of significant value to Ukraine on its public announcement of the investigations. With the same corrupt motives, President Trump, acting both directly and through his agents within and outside the U.S. government's conditioned to two official acts on the public announcement that he had requested. And those who have not been paying attention outside of this, the Southern District of New York has already indicted Ukrainian associates of Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani, Lev Parnas, and Igor Fruman for conspiring to violate straw and foreign donor bans. Former Ukraine ambassador Mira Yovanovitch, I actually said that correctly, testified that she found out from Ukrainian officials that Giuliani, Parnas, and Fruman were conspiring to oust her, she believed, because of her reputation against corruption in Ukraine. So, only 2 of the 4 articles of impeachment, 1 and 3 against Clinton, passed the full House. They had to do with his lying about his sexual relationship with a White House intern, which is grand jury perjury, and obstruction of justice that include his own lying and encouraging witnesses to do so, which is Articles 2, perjury in the civil courts, and Article 4, abuse of power. And they were both voted down. In Nixon's case, there were a whole slew of yeah, he was screwed from the beginning. There were a litany of potential crimes in Nixon's cases, known as Watergate, which was the name of the hotel complex, where the burglary of Nixon's Democratic opponents were carried out. While one witness alleged Nixon ordered the break-in, no hard evidence emerged to show that he did. So you won't find in the 3 articles of impeachment against Nixon the words burglary or conspiracy. Instead, Article 1 for him was about obstruction of justice, which was a statutory crime. Article 2 dealt with Nixon's violating constitutional rights of citizens, which includes potential crimes. For example, obtaining tax returns for purposes not authorized by law, electronic surveillance for no lawful functions of his office, and potential misuse of campaign funds. Article 3 for Nixon was similar to Trump's Article 2, which dealt with obstruction of Congress, and the language is strikingly similar in parts. I'll read Nixon's. This is Nixon's. In his conduct of the office of the President of the United States, Richard M. Nixon, contrary to his oath faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States and, to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duties to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, has failed without lawful cause or at the same excuse to produce papers and things as directed by duly authorized subpoenas issued by the Committee on the Judiciary of the House of Representatives on April 11, 1974, May 15, 1974, May 30, 1974, and June 24, 1974, and willfully disobeyed such subpoenas. Now, this is Trump's version. In his conduct of the office of President of the United States and in violation of his constitutional oath faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States and, to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, Donald J. Trump has directed the unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance of subpoenas issued by the House of Representatives pursuant to its sole power of impeachment. So, obviously, Republicans argued that Clinton and Nixon committed statutory crimes that were outlined in the articles of impeachment, and therefore their impeachment cases were more serious. Democrats believe Trump's abuse of power is worse than Clinton's. For example, Representative Zoe Lofgren of California said, "If it's lying about sex, we could put Stormy Daniels' case ahead of us." So, in some ways, they believe that Trump did worse than Nixon because of a broader effort by Trump to stymie congressional oversight, as University of North Carolina professor Michael Gerhardt argued during testimony before the House Judiciary Committee. So, what's more, Democrats disagree with the premise altogether. They argue that Trump could qualify to be charged with statutory crimes for his conduct based on what's laid out in the articles of impeachment if a prosecutor wanted to take it up, which is what California's Representative Eric Swalwell, a former prosecutor, argued in Thursday's Judiciary Committee. So he's laid out a case for bribery and honest services fraud charges against Trump, but he noted Congress' job is to protect the Constitution. So the president committed the highest crime against the Constitution by abusing his office, Swalwell said, cheating in an election, inviting foreign interference for purely personal gain, while jeopardizing our national security and the integrity of our elections. And boom. I would actually have another more, but because technology has failed me once again. Starscream. So that is what I have for you today in terms of, that's what I have for you today. I just wanted to lay out what's currently happening in the articles of impeachment against Trump and how they compare to previous. I now, in retrospect, realize I don't have any of Andrew Johnson's, so hopefully I can dig that up. But by the time this show comes on next month, the whole thing will hopefully already be over, since it will be in January. And they're not paying attention. But anywho, so with that, I will sign off with you and have a great day on this Friday. Today's Friday the 13th, actually. So have a great night, have a great day, and as usual, don't do anything I wouldn't do.